Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you for joining us for another SikhRI Current Events podcast. Today we are discussing the question that went viral. We're having a conversation on the Sikhs, 1984, and Rahul Gandhi. So for some context for our viewers and listeners, in April, Rahul Gandhi stopped at Brown University for a speaking engagement. Sidak Alumni Gurpartap Singh asked him what the Congress Party is doing to pursue true reconciliation with the Sikhs. So in that conversation, many things came up that we'll get some reflections on, we'll get some contextualization on. Their interaction proceeded to go viral, and it was used in narratives against the Congress Party in India on various outlets, media outlets. So with that being said, our purpose today is, in the age of virality, to take this opportunity to be thoughtful about the experience and to get some reflections without spin from those media outlets who all have their own agendas. Today we're going to discuss Gurpartap's reflections on his interaction with Gandhi, how we can understand the context Gurpartap centered in his questions, and how he feels about Mr. Gandhi's response. What would he like to see happen, and how does he hope we can all learn from this? So without further ado, we are joined by Gurpartap Singh, 2022 Sikhi 201 Sidak alum, and a student at Brown University studying computer science and political science. We're also joined by Harinder Singh, Senior Fellow and Innovation Director at SikhRI. Fateh to you both. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Fateh, nice to be back in this podcast with you and Gurpratap.
Yes.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I just want to thank everybody for giving me the space to reflect about my interactions with Rahul Gandhi, and I'm excited for this podcast.
Great, me too. Okay, so maybe we can get started then. Gurpratap, can you start by telling us a bit about your experience in choosing to ask Rahul Gandhi a question? How did you prepare? Like, what did that look like? Or was it spur of the moment? What informed your question? And what were your hopes for, like, what would come out of it?
Yes, so I found out about Rahul Gandhi's event a day before it had happened, and I was in the car with my dad, and then I told him about this rare opportunity I had, especially to represent the Sikh community in front of Rahul Gandhi. And then I asked him what had to be done, what needed to be done, and then he mentioned that people like Jagdish Titler and Kamal Nath and other Congress members, they were living freely after the crimes he had committed against the Sikhs, after the atrocities they committed against the Sikhs. So I just wanted to use this opportunity to talk to Rahul Gandhi and talk about how the Congress Party never really reconciled with the Sikhs about what happened in 1984. Yes, many Congress members have apologized, but apologies aren't really enough. I simply wanted to ask him what actions he was taking to reconcile with the Sikh community. And the context for this question was last time he was in the United States, he had asked Sikhs about how they felt about India under the BJP. He asked, would Sikhs be allowed to wear their turbans? Would Sikhs be allowed to wear their karas? So I started my question off with that tweet where I asked Rahul Gandhi, I told Rahul Gandhi that Sikhs are not just concerned about being able to wear the kara, to be able to wear the turban, but Sikhs want to, they want the freedom of expression. Sikhs want the autonomy they were promised by the Congress Party. The Sikhs want to practice their sovereignty as a nation. So I mentioned things like the Anandpur Sahib Resolution. I mentioned 1984, because they all had to do with this idea of Sikhs being able to express their freedom or not in India, and what that looks like when Sikhs tried to express their freedom under the Congress Party. So what I wanted out of this was Rahul Gandhi to realize the Congress Party has a lot to do, and I wanted him to take responsibility and do actionable things for the Sikh community.
Yeah, so maybe as we sort of move through this, especially because not everybody might have context, Harinder Singh, can you maybe contextualize for those who don't know, who is Mr. Gandhi and what is that larger history of the relationship between Sikhs and the Congress Party that Gurpartap just alluded to? And then, because a lot of the sort of virality of this moment fell into kind of BJP talking points, I think it would also be helpful to understand how the BJP comes into this dynamic as well.
Jasleen, thank you for asking that question. The context of Congress, Sikhs, and Punjab actually goes back almost 150 years when the party was formed in late 1800s. And from 1800s to 1947, when the new nations of India and Pakistan and other nations were born, when British left the colonial period, Sikhs actually from 1920s were having very close relationship with Congress party at the time called All India Congress. And when I say close, what it means is that when Sikhs are fighting in revolutionary ways to free South Asia, whether they were joining British, whether they were joining Japanese, whether they were fighting independently, whether they were fighting in a non-violent ways, Gandhi's and Nehru's and other leadership of All India Congress between 1920s, 30s, and 40s was appreciating what Sikhs were doing, what Punjab was doing. But even then, because they were not bringing those into their policy makings, when they fought the first elections in 1930s, they did not win elections in Punjab. So there is something to be said about that as well. Now, what happens is they're seeing from 37 to 47 for 10 years. So they start to promise things for Punjab and Sikhs, how they will have their glow of freedom. They're standing up in All India Congress sessions in Lahore and talking about these things. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, who is a popular leader of the Congress, he promises them. Jawaharlal Nehru, he eventually becomes the first Prime Minister of India. He promises, and many others as well. And from there, when India becomes independent, the relationship between Sikhs and Punjab vis-a-vis India became incredibly tense because they did not deliver on any of those promises. So from independent India, the first Prime Minister is Jawaharlal Nehru, and the Rahul Gandhi, Mr. Gandhi we just referenced, is his great-grandson. So let's talk about that quickly. When Jawaharlal Nehru becomes president in 1947, Prime Minister, sorry, after that, the Prime Minister is Mrs. Gandhi, named Indira Gandhi. That's Rahul Gandhi's grandmother. Under her tenureship, and Congress has been ruling most of independent India, and under her tenureship between 1970s to 1980s, the relationship between Sikhs and Punjab and India versus India became incredibly tense. From the emergency period to civil disobedience movement of the Sikhs as an Akali party, as well as what eventually culminated in 1984 with the genocidal campaign, the storming of the Gurdwaras all over Punjab, the sealing of the Punjab, all that happened during Mrs. Gandhi period. After that, her son Rajiv Gandhi became the prime minister, who was Rahul Gandhi's father. And during his tenure, which is also very tense, there are accords even being signed, which most Sikhs actually opposed, but even those accords were not fulfilled. One of them is called Rajiv Longowal Accord, for example. And then after him, Rahul Gandhi is his son, and in last 10 years, he's at the helm of affairs of the Congress Party of India. So this relationship of Congress with Punjab and Sikhs has been very, very tense. They have been grappling with it. Not much has come out in policy-making areas. The relationship has been very violent at times as well, non-cordial at times, and it has affected many things in Sikh psyche, many things on Punjab versus when the Congress does certain things. And Rahul Gandhi is currently grappling with how to take care of some of those.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was very helpful. And so I think then it makes sense, Gurpartap, to ask you, you mentioned very particular things in your question to Mr. Gandhi. Can you tell us why you chose to mention 1984, the Anandpur Sahib Resolution, and KPS Gill? Why those examples? What were you hoping to communicate? Now that we've gotten more context from Harinder Singh.
What I was trying to communicate is Sikhs are political people and Sikhs are sovereign, as Harinder had just told us. When Rahul Gandhi says, Sikhs being allowed to wear their turbans and gadas in India, that's very much an apolitical thing. Where what I was trying to express is that Sikhs are equally political. And when Sikhs are political, that's when the right to wear the turban, the right to wear the gada is a threat. So the reason I mention the Anandpur Sahib Resolution, that was an example of Sikhs practicing their autonomy as a nation. Um, and I even brought up stuff that were important not just for Sikhs, but something all of India could benefit from, since it mentions caste-based discrimination. It mentions literacy rates need to go up across the nation. Labor rights are mentioned. So this is a very strong political document written by the Sikhs, but it's used against the Sikhs. It's labeled a separatist document. It's labeled extremist today. Um, so I was trying to communicate this idea that whenever Sikhs practice um, their media, they're always threatened by the government, and the Congress has done that in the past, and the BJP continues to do so. So what the BJP is doing now, what Rahul Gandhi is expressing, is something the Congress party did, and the BJP is just continuing. Um, for example, Harinder ji mentioned the emergency. In the emergency, Sikhs led many protests with Sant Kartar Singh ji specifically, about 37 protests against the emergency, which had gotten rid of civil liberties and civil rights for many in India. This was an example of Sikhs practicing their political Sikhi. And in return, 1984 happens, which we know is a battle against, the political Sikhi, as Joyce Pettigrew says. It was an attack on the spirit of the Sikhs, right? We also see that Amritaris under the Congress rule are labeled as a dangerous group by the military in June. So Amritaris, those wearing the turbans and the kadas, are directly targeted. And KPS Gill is one of those figures that directly targeted Sikhs that had, turbans, kadas, or Amritaris, specifically because they were Sikh. So I was trying to express the fact that the Congress party did not allow Sikhs to truly wear their turbans and their kadas the ways they wanted to. That's what I was hoping to communicate. And KPS Gill is somebody that is recognized as a hero by the Congress party, celebrated.
Yeah, and I think that's helpful. It points to a larger, maybe like theme of Sikhs being used as sort of pawns in a political narrative, or like invoking Sikhs at certain times, in order to get a larger point across in this like battle in the political sphere between different parties. Um, so then maybe to understand these things in more depth, because I think, Gurpartap, what you were alluding to as well is that like when Sikhs assert that kind of sovereignty within and outside of the structures of a nation state, those things are treated as threats, even when they're fighting for rights outside of just their own, right? Like there's this fallback on claiming that Sikhs are separatists or claiming that they're extremist, even as they're fighting for basic human rights. So all that being said, Harinder, if you can help us understand these examples in more depth, maybe we can start with the Anandpur Sahib Resolution. What was the Congress Party's role in labeling it as a separatist document, and what are the like echoes of that into the present day? I think that would be a helpful place to start.
Sure. Well, actually, there is a big irony in this, and let me start with that. Anandpur Sahib Resolution has essentially two elements to it. Okay? One element is very, very specific to Sikhs. In fact, most of that is in its preamble. When it comes to the 12 resolution points, it actually is all about India and securing rights for all Indians and all states in India. And this is the part which most people, when they're referring to it or talking about it, they ignore it. But that's what this is. This was actually about creating the federal structure for India. And I just want to mention a couple of things. People who participated in the committee which drafted this, and the man who ended up making its draft, which was accepted by the political party of the Sikhs at the time, the man who drafted is Sardar Kapoor Singh. He is ICS in pre-independent India. He's IAS in independent India. He's a parliamentarian in 70s as well. So this is a man who knows what he's drafting. The committee members included even the first prime minister Sikhs have had, which is not Manmohan Singh. He was under the Congress government post 1984. Is Gyan Singh Radewala at the time. because India used to have a very different structure on how they dealt with the states between 40s and 50s. And Gyan Singh Radhewala was a prime minister by title, actually. It included him. It included Major General Gurpartap Singh. People who had served India well, people who had served pre-British, under British, sorry, and under India, they came up with what does India need? Because what has happened in India between 47 and 72 is not what India was dreamt to be. That's the context. In that context, Anandpur Sahib Resolution is presented. It's thought out for more than a year. More than 10 meetings take place or deliberations of the kind of individuals I just mentioned, including the future chief minister and a central cabinet minister, Surjit Singh Barnala, and people like who were the heads of SGPCs at the time, Gurcharan Singh Toda. So this is not radical stuff.
Mm.
If you want to use radical, what was radical about the document was how to make India a federal structure. Now, which means more rights for all states. And then part of it was the discriminations against Punjab and biases against Sikhs. They were being questioned and addressed, and there are very specific asks. But the larger asks, I want to come back to it, is about the farmers' issues, the water issues, the rights of oppressed minorities, both gender, ethnic primarily at that time, and religious. And it is also about what to do with the labor issues in India. So this is what Anandpur Sahib Resolution was. Mrs. Gandhi was, this is pre-emergency. So you have to really understand how Sikhs have actually been the visionaries for India. It's 1972, towards the end of 1972, it gets adopted, which is what should be the new vision for India by the thinkers, by the military leaders, by the politicians, by the former PMs, who are all Sikhs, who have been serving for 30 years, and they present this document. And within its, as soon as it's presented, Mrs. Gandhi is consolidating power at the time. Indira Gandhi, who was Rahul Gandhi's grandmother, she presents it as a separatist document. Now, here is the irony where I started. The irony is in last year's elections in 2024, national elections of India, Lok Sabha elections as they're called, two of the elements which Rahul Gandhi actually did campaign on within India, guess what? Caste issues, the rights of Dalits, and the right to create India a federal structure. So I would say we welcome that he took that without giving us the credit. And that's the document which mentions this. And in last 10 years, the social scientists in India, including the ones from JNU and other places, have been talking about how India really needed to be federal structures. So we were 50 years ahead, thinking what India needs, not just what Sikhs and Punjab needs. So that's why I'm calling it an irony. And the part about BJP is also pretty clear. Look, you used the word pawns when you responded to Gurpratap. Yes, whenever BJP is in opposition, they say the same arguments on siding with the Sikhs, but nothing happens in policies. When Congress is in opposition, they also side with the Sikhs, but nothing happens during their reign. So this is the game which has been happening with the administration of India. The union government of India is what I would like to say, because that's what it's called technically. But Sikhs have been patiently and very clearly articulating these things for almost 80 years now. And no end seems to be coming on how to really bring this in policy making.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think it helps illustrate the kind of, the long-term effects of even that document. And it's crazy to hear how long it's been that those things haven't been addressed. Gurpratap also mentioned 1984 and the Congress Party's role in the events leading up to and during June and October and November. Can you also give some of the listeners and viewers some context on that, because they might not know the extent of the Congress Party's involvement, or members of the Congress Party's involvement? That might be helpful.
Well, the administration at the time is Mrs. Gandhi's, who's Rahul Gandhi's grandmother. So obviously the whole thing was done under her command. What happened in 1984 is, I don't know a single Sikh who sided with Mrs. Gandhi, even if they were Congress. This affected the complete Sikh nation, or the Commonwealth of Sikhs, which are beyond nation state of India. Currently, we sit at 30 million. There were multiple operations, quote unquote, which targeted first people in Punjab, not just in Amritsar, not just in Golden Temple complex, but all over Punjab. The whole Punjab was sealed at each border, both international and national. Then there were operations after that, which targeted the villagers, every single village of Punjab. Then there was operation which was preponed on the when Mrs. Gandhi was assassinated, which targeted people outside of Punjab, but within India. That's what happened in 1984, and there was a decade of policies which are clearly documented. In SAF organization currently does it. What happened in Punjab at that time, Jaswant Singh Khala had done it. And it is the administration both in Punjab, which is under Congress, and in center that all this started and continued. And this is the point which we need to understand, that 1984, yes, we are very aware that when Manmohan Singh became prime minister, he had a public apology. But I would like to say that within a couple of months of that, Jasleen Kaur, the founder of INSAF, also analyzed that apology. What does apology really mean when you make it conditional, when you don't work on reparation, this idea of justice and accountability? Even after that, another 20 years have gone by. And the continuation of grievances and not addressing of those still remains. So this is the context of 1984. This is not about BJP or Congress, although the Congress was the administration. And the reason I say that, it cannot be just about that, because we have seen even the Punjab's leaders in 10 years who are Congress leaders are also openly talking about these things. And when BJP has been in power, it has not done administratively from a policy perspective much on this. Why are cases of under Punjab Human Rights Commission, National Human Rights Commission, only few cases which are accepted in CBI courts, which is a Central Bureau of Investigation, several years ago, only those are being pursued. No new things are being allowed. So what does justice and accountability looks like? That paves the way for reconciliation. And that whole conversation is not in the national dialogue, not in the Congress party dialogue. It is not even in the BJP dialogue, both at state level of Punjab, conversations with the Sikh leaders who are not just supporters of BJP or Congress, because it involves the whole of Sikh community. And those are the kind of things which are unaddressed.
Yeah. And I think that's helpful for all of us to understand the larger theme, or even the function of invoking those examples points to that larger issue of unaddressed grievances, and like how can reconciliation happen if like true justice and accountability hasn't been pursued, or hasn't been pursued to the degree that it ought to be. So thank you for that. Gurpratap, I want you to sort of take us into the moment of the asking of the question. How were you feeling at that time? What was your experience in that moment? And what was your feeling on his response?
We only had 1 minute per question, so my goal was to say as much as I can in that 1 minute, and I did go a little bit over. But the experience was interesting because when I do mention the Anandpur Sahib Resolution, um, from the front row, I hear one of the professors, somebody like let out quite a loud chuckle, which I found very interesting about the crowd that was there and the feelings they had about these topics in general. And when I asked Mr. Gandhi this question, I assumed he was, surprised to be hearing questions about Sikh issues, from '84 at one of, America's Ivy League universities. So there's definitely some shock that you could see from his side. And his response was inadequate. If you guys seen the clip, he just said that he's been to the Gurdwara a few times and that Sikhs love him, and that what his party did was wrong. He does take responsibility for that. And then my feeling on his response was, I hope this responsibility is not just, those conditional apologies we talked about. I hope when he says, I take responsibility, what he means by that is the things that need to be done for justice and accountability is something he'll talk about, something he'll campaign about, and something that will happen. I actually even had a student follow up on this question where the follow up was short in saying that you said you went to the Gurdwara, but is this really, real reconciliation? But even for that question, he answered a different part of their question. And since the clip has gone viral, um, one thing I'm really grateful for is that these conversations are happening again in Punjab. There's this idea that this gaping wound we feel from the fact there was never any justice and accountability after 84 is something that exists in the diaspora. But the fact that so many Punjabis started talking about it, so many people in India and Punjab started talking about it, shows that this is still a Sikh issue. This is still something that needs to be addressed. And I just hope these conversations keep happening and we don't forget about what happened in 84.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. Um, maybe Harinder, you can talk about this after I offer this little little reflection. But I think it's interesting because even in the context of like conversations amongst Sikhs, there is this question in the diaspora. I mean, that's my experience of like, what is our relationship to um 84 and what are our narratives around 84 and there's this also like undercurrent maybe of like, has it been like so long that we ought not to be talking about this anymore like sometimes. And I think maybe that's, I mean, I'm not surprised, but I'm disheartened to hear that the mention of the Anandpur Sahib Resolution maybe caused somebody to chuckle, but I think there's like a lack of maybe seriousness with which certain things are treated because people are like, well, it's been enough time and y'all are still complaining, like it gets minimized and dismissed. Um, and so I think that is a really, maybe a wonderful thing that's come out of this is the renewed just like evidence of the fact that these things still matter to so many people and that it's not an easily dismissible thing. Um, and that to keep those conversations alive is in itself like a thing that maybe those who hold more power don't want. Um, so all that being said, Gurpartap, you said that the response was inadequate. I'm wondering, Harinder, what your reaction was to his response, to Rahul Gandhi's response, and you know, has the Congress Party made tangible attempts to reconcile with the Sikhs or hold their party members accountable? He mentioned going to the Bar Sahib. He mentioned having a loving relationship with the Sikhs, but like, what are the tangible things, if any, that have been done? And yeah, maybe you can reflect on that and on his acknowledgement, because that is not nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is where I would like to invoke Sikhi now, because it's not that people are not concerned. Every concerned Sikh is very concerned about these issues, whether it's 84, whether it's 47, because the issues are unresolved. And when you have unresolved issues, their manifestations may change, but they still need to be grappled with in order to come up with what to do about it. So first thing I would say is actually about Gurpratap. I am glad from his understanding, he asked a question which is thoughtful. He in fact asked me, what should I be asking? I said, whatever makes sense to you. So this is how it needs to be. We don't need to be, I think we have enough people who understand, people like him, both in Punjab and in diaspora and in diaspora, who are studying these things or they had a family member who was at the receiving end of some of those atrocities. So this is not about just the diaspora does it or Punjab does it. No, we all don't yell about these things, but we don't also apologize if somebody yells, because sometimes, it's emotional. If enough people have been killed in your families, we must understand that. So I'm basically saying I was happy to see that Gurpratap Singh actually came up with a question which Eventually, when he stopped chuckling, he had to become serious. I'll now come to him. Look, it was perhaps unexpected, but I think he gathered himself very quickly, and he firstly took responsibility. That's what you do. I think it's a good sign of leadership. He didn't make ifs and buts about it, but then he doesn't know what else to do about it yet. He's trying, is what I would say. I'm also observing, many Sikhs are observing him. We know there is a battle within the Congress party about what to do with the party itself. What to do about people, for example, last year when there were elections, I was hoping that he can actually take a lead, which would have changed the destiny of India possibly, to actually acknowledge and say, we will ban every single person where the evidence exists, even if they are not convicted, who were involved in the targeted killing of the Sikhs. But that would have meant that number 3 or 4 position man right now, who is a former chief minister of Madhya Pradesh, Kamal Nath, he needed to ban that person from the party. We needed to say something about Jagdish Teitlers and many other people, but these two are, enough evidence exists. CBI trials on these keep going in and out, depending on the political pressures of the time and the political climate of the time. That becomes more of a Congress and BJP thing. But what I'm saying is, this is the struggle which is happening within the Congress party. The party is very aware of this. He's very aware of this. The Punjab's Congress leaders, MLAs and MPs are very aware of these issues. They're openly talking about it in the last 5 years. And I think it will come down to, what does Rahul Gandhi want to be known for? Even he got defeated anyway. Can you imagine if a dynastic leader of independent India for the first time would have said that this is a question of conscience of India? That's the leadership missing in India. Nobody's talking about conscience. Whether Congress caters to Sikhs, BJP caters to Sikhs, AAP caters to Sikhs, Akalis cater to Sikhs. The conscience of India, even when they're fighting for Khalistan, there are 3 elected MPs currently who are on record doing this. Eventually, they are working within Indian confines. And within those Indian confines, nobody's talking about what needs to be acknowledged and changed for the people of India. And this is the question for Rahul Gandhi himself. So I would say, I also see, I don't think it is just ceremonial. And Sikhs, by the way, have been okay with this when he goes to the Darbar Sahib complex to do seva. In fact, some people tried to politicize, but Sikhs didn't. And this is what everyone needs to understand. We do not politicize the party person, whether it's Congress or BJP or any other parties I mentioned. They all politicize it, yes. But in his case, he actually didn't, and some party people tried to. I think there is something to be said about that. Maybe he's trying. And we already know there's a tussle within the party. Second thing I would say is, Jasleen, that this question of political parties, we are still less than 2% in India, Sikh population. Punjab's current Indian state of Punjab is not as much of a regional political power left because of our Sikh party political problems as well. So when you don't have much to offer on a political seat, the negotiations also don't happen right. And people are very aware of that. Every administration is aware of that. I think, look, when he talked about Kada, I remember when he gave the statement in Virginia and US. In fact, I was in India a couple of days after that, and there was a press conference in Delhi where they asked me to come speak. And I remember, addressing that issue, and the reporter saying, but is this anti-BJP or is this pro-Congress? I'm like, neither. Sikhs have always been, the Sikhi is about, we don't have a permanent alliance with anyone. This is what I wanted to say from Sikhi angle. We are here to work on behalf of all peoples. We are the believers of Ikku Onkar. There is no otherness. If somebody does othering, whether it is with the Sikhs or extra Sikh, we take stands. Okay? This is what Sikhi is about. So if he shows that he is supporting us for our turban and kada rights, we appreciate that. But we are not giving a blanket card to anyone, whether it's BJP or Congress or AAP or Akalis. And our history is clear. Even within 2025, it's so clear. Nobody gets a blank check from us, but we appreciate when they at least voice some Sikh concerns. But that doesn't mean we have a permanent alliance with any of the political parties.
Yeah, that's great. And I think also, I mean, maybe kind of going off of what you just said, I wonder like what still needs to be done, not just in the case of the Congress Party or the BJP or whoever, but also in the case of Sikhs in the political sphere in India as well. Like what what kind of steps can be taken towards reconciliation and justice, but also what kind of steps can be taken by Sikhs to sort of consolidate that political power so that there is an ability to have these discussions. I'm curious about what your take is on that.
I think anyone who's working with these political parties, and there are Sikh members in all of them, right? And I don't want us to say when people side, we have had prime ministers or we have had finance ministers and the head of the army or the planning commission in Congress. Look, we have had ministers in both parties. That doesn't mean they have addressed Sikh or Punjab concerns. So first thing I would say is anyone who wants to do things where it's more than a statement or more than a PR campaign, they really do need to understand Sikh psyche, which I think they're struggling. When we say Miri Piri, it actually is political and spiritual sovereignty. Doesn't matter which nation state we stay in, whether it's America, UK, Australia, Canada, not just India and Pakistan. Everything is not about India and Pakistan. But yes, 70% of Sikhs still live in Punjab, Indian Punjab, and 17% live in the rest of India. So our focus becomes India. That's the reason. But they all really do need to understand we are sovereign as a faith and sovereign as people. And Sardar Kapoor Singh actually articulated that, the same person who drafted the Anandpur Sahib Resolution, that any state in the world, including Indian state, if they do not address the concerns of the Sikhs, they will lose them as allies and they will be adversaries. Because you're violating not just their rights. Whenever they stand for other people's right, you're also crushing them. And this is the Sikh DNA. We have 557-year history, which is very, very clear on this issue of Miri Piri, political and spiritual sovereignty. We are believers of Ekko Onkar, which means we believe there is only one creative and pervasive force. That means there is no otherness. What that also means is we are the non-violent of the strong people. And I do want to mention that even the Congress has seen this. Rahul Gandhi himself said they're not fearful of anyone. You know where that's coming from? Because one of the attributes of the divine we believe is fearless, nirpa. The one right after that mentioned is nirvair, which means we also don't have enemies per se. We have adversaries. We are trying to work out things. So we are not hateful on anyone. We operate in love, but we are very much agents of justice. And Congress and India and other administrations now have had very good case studies dealing with Sikhs where they have not resulted in good policies. So we don't just are going to be protectors of India or protectors of Hinduism or Dharam. Our thesis is that this is the anniversary of Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib. Every party will be celebrating this. Well, for our secondary text said he was a protector of humanity, srisht each other. So please present and understand what Sikhi is, these two elements. And when we are non-violent of the weak, what that means is we will exhaust every other means, but we are also very capable of fighting back. And that's what this history shows even during Gandhi regimes, from Jawaharlal Nehru to currently if Rahul, as he's engaging as a leader. So I think that needs to be really, really well understood. And Congress has opposed our things, even in British India, when the Punjab's revolutionaries were picking up arms to fight the British. Bhagat Singh is part of it, Udham Singh is part of it. They all denounced all of that. So similarly, then they later appropriated them. Now everyone is celebrating Bhagat Singh and Udham Singhs. So this is something, and Kartar Singh Sarabbas of the world. And as it comes closer to the history, you're seeing now we are embracing almost all parties, because even Akal Takht had embraced in the last 15 years anyone who fought back in 80s. So those are the kind of things where they need to stop playing, spinning, and understand the Sikh psyche. And Sikh psyche, the last thing I will say is also very, very clear. Anyone who has, in 557 years of Sikh history, genuinely apologized, we repeat a phrase, dekh ke dit karna. We have forgiven them and we never remind them. But it has to be genuine, which means don't play games with us. Take care of what is needed, and we move on very quickly. But don't ask us to move on without addressing it.
Yeah. No, I can feel my brain moving a mile a minute. So let me just ask you, Gurpratap, and then if anybody has any sort of last reflections, we can end on that. But what would you like to see happen? You sort of mentioned it, but maybe you can say it again. Not just in sort of the political sphere with Gandhi and his party, with all of the other parties, but also, you took an opportunity to ask a thoughtful question, informed by your understanding of Sikh history, of Bani, of that Sikh psyche that Harinder Singh was talking about. So what do you see as our responsibility too, whether we're in the diaspora or the inspira, whether we're sitting in Punjab or sitting in, you know, the northeast of the United States? What do you see as our responsibility as Sikhs in pursuing that justice, in continuing also um, to keep alive the conversations about the things that actually haven't been addressed, that we're constantly kind of being asked to forget about or dismiss? So it's a two-parter, but take your time.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to my last response. So I did find his initial response inadequate, but at the end of the program, he actually approaches me where he's like, what can I do for the sick? So I genuinely do think he is trying. And all I could ask is that the Sikhs in Punjab, get together and voice those things, not just to the Congress Party, but all policymakers, about what needs to be done in terms of policy. And I also think Sikhs everywhere, we need to continue educating ourselves and continuing to educate others, especially those that have a lot of influence in these spaces. For example, one of the professors at Brown University, who's like the expert of India, even Washington D.C. goes to him when they have questions about India, was he didn't know there was rapes that had happened in November 1984, which is quite a big thing. So in our conversation, I mentioned one of the reparations that were never made were for these women that were, that had a lot of violent crimes that happened against them. And then he was kind of shocked it even happened, to the point he didn't believe me until I presented him with evidence, right? So there's a lot of education that needs to be done for these influential people too, as well as I think as a community we should continue to reclaim our institutions that do have some power. For example, the Akal Takht Sahib itself could continue to make this, um, a major demand of the Sikh community. They could voice that. For example, that's not something that's really being done right now. Um, and as a community, we need to continue to protect and aid those that suffer from 1984. Do whatever we can until it's done by the Indian state, by institutions. Until then, we need to take our responsibility to help those people out, help those Sikhs out. And just as the final statement is just going with that needy aspect, as Sikhs, we all need to gain as much political education as we can. We need to understand the geopolitical landscapes around us within America. Understand, are we sovereign as Sikhs in the diaspora? Are we really practicing our sovereignty here? If not, how can we do so? And how can we bring back that sovereignty, bring back that Sikh spirit across the globe?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, yeah, Harinder Singh, if you have any final reflections, that would also be helpful. I think one of the things I'm thinking of, just hearing Gurpratap's response too, is like even the fact that you were able to show that professor proof of something that you talked about. The fact that he didn't know and the fact that you had somewhere that you could go where like data has been collected, stories have been collected, that too is like part of our work, right? Like those things are made possible by Sikhs who have looked at um, the events of 84 and their own sort of skill sets and really committed to documenting and archiving and interviewing survivors. So that's also a thing maybe for all of us to reflect on, not just in the context of 84, but in the context of anything from our history that requires attention still, which there is so much. Like, what are the skills that we have that we can commit to something within that discussion so that, however many years from now, when somebody's asking for proof or somebody's asking for context or analysis or whatever, we can actually point them somewhere. Um, yeah, Harinder Singh, if you want to offer any final thoughts, then maybe we can close out. This has been really great.
Sure. So I would say to young adults who like Gurpratap Singh and yourself and others who are in this sphere, look, there are deliberate omissions on telling the Sikh story and Punjab story. That's what we know already as a fact. So we have our work cut out. Even last year, PUDL, which is a Delhi-based organization, which put out the first book about the genocidal campaign in November 1984, October 31st to November, first few days of November. They put out a report and analysis of, in 40 years, how many cases have been dismissed, how many cases they didn't even look at. It's not that these things people are not working on. Every administration is ignoring them. The mainstream media ignores them. Some courts, most of the time, ignore them, but few, depending on the political climate, it comes up. News reportings of these things, even of this event, they couldn't even do basic homework to figure out who this Sikh young student is. It became more about spinning very quickly. And this is what we need to be aware of. Nobody is going to tell our story. We need to tell our own story. There is no nation on earth which talks about Sikhs unless they need to use us. It's very simple politically. That means our work has to be told. We have to work on it. We must develop our competencies. We must do it with care and respect. We need not become uncivil and hateful about it. We are the people of love and justice, and that's what it requires. So whether you can do it in Punjab, whether you can do it in New Delhi, whether you do it sitting in East Coast of the US, wherever you are, if this is about your people, if you identify as a Sikh, or if this is about your people, if you identify as Punjabi, this is our work. Do not, we can only trust people to do something when we know they are deliberately not being addressed or omitted. That's the work. We have shown it again in 40 years, even on 1980. KPS Gill. I mean, KPS Gill, now this week, his family is openly talking about it as if he has to be resurrected. No. I mean, in Punjabi psyche, in Sikh psyche, in human rights circles, everyone knows he was a butcher of Punjab. Doesn't matter how you spin it. There's a movie which Bombay court is still sitting on because the Indian administration is not allowing it to come out. It's about Jaswant Singh Khalda. That directly involved KPS Gill, who even violated the chief minister, who was Congress chief minister, Beyan Singh at that time, even his orders. So there is something which is very, very real about this, whether it involves the cops, former or current, administrations, security agencies, academia, media, all of that. They're actually culprits in this. I'm calling them culprits. It's a strong word because they have been part of the problem. They haven't been becoming part of the solution. With the exception of very few journalists and very few human rights organizations, this issue really is not being studied. And unless it is studied at a nuanced level, it cannot be fully addressed. So that's our work everywhere in the world. And those who sympathize with us, we don't need more commemorations. We appreciate that. What we need is that Sikhs have been commemorating from day one, and we will continue, but do understand why we do it, what our psyche is, because we want to also be not just contributing members of the communities we live in, but we also want to be free as faith and people.
That's great. Thank you both. Thank you both so much for such a thoughtful discussion. And I hope those of you who are listening or watching are also walking away with some more things to reflect on. With that, we'll sign off. Thank you all so much. And we'll see you on the next SikhRI Current Events podcast. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.